Community Culture Unveiled, uncovering and discussing the secrets of mental health in oppressed communities. Hosted by a girl for all girls. Welcome to Community Culture Unveiled. I'm Teresa and I'm joined by my esteemed co-host. And today we'll be exploring and sort of discussing and delving into issues in our community, primarily related to fear and all of us living in fear as we reside in our communities. Now, as we were exploring before the show what topic to choose, we kind of got into a back and forth about it. And I just want to say that we did not just wake up and decide to do a show. We are real women with real issues. And to give some validity to that, I want to sort of have Dr. Monique, who's a clinical psychologist, sort of take us into what we discussed in our basically pre-show meeting. Dr. Monique?
Yeah, no, so because thank you, Sister Teresa. We're, as you mentioned, talking about fears today, and fear, that's a big topic. It really is a big topic, and it's something that touches all of us, even in our everyday lives. Sometimes we think about fear, we think about the big thing that happens every now and again, but there are elements of fear that we experience every day. We have, I guess, a certain perception, an idea, understanding of how we think about fears in this society. We have sayings like, face your fears, conquer your fears, or, you fear nothing but fear itself, these types of sayings. And if you're a Muslim, you've also heard, fear none but Allah, right? So there's all these ideas in our society about overcoming fears. And I'm hoping that through our discussion today, that we will be able to stimulate ideas and thoughts for our studio audience on how to, tackle, how to overcome, how to even understand fear.
Right.
And so I wanted to I guess, frame it for us a little bit so that we can begin to kind of kick it around and discuss it a little bit more.
Okay.
But if you had to guess what the research says or studies say about what the most common fear is, what would you say? Most common fear.
I would say anxiety.
Anxiety. Okay.
Heights. For Black people might be swimming. We us in water.
We don't do water well. Any thoughts, Sister Mila?
I would say death, fear of death, fear of police, fear of being shot.
Oh, yeah.
Right now in our society, that is huge. But according to what some will say, there's a lot of variation in this area, but a lot of people will say that the most common fear is social phobias, which is an anxiety, like Sister Tequila, but you were mentioning. Social phobia. So it's said that 1 out of every 20 people experience some sort of social phobia. In case we don't know what social phobia is, you can think of it as an excessive, self-consciousness in certain social settings. So, we all probably experience some degree of social anxiety, right? But a phobia is something that it stops you. Like you can't do it. I'm not going for it. I cannot do it because it's just going to be horrendous, horrible, frightening, whatever we think it is, right? So, but that said, fear and phobia are not exactly the same thing. And that's important to understand, right? Fear, in terms of framing it, we want to understand is really more of a spectrum, right? It's more of a range of emotions, right? That will range from less intense, like maybe trepidation, stress, anxiety, nervousness, right? To more severe or more intense experiences of fear, like terror or panic or phobias, right? Those are the more intense ones. So that's what fear is. Fear is that spectrum. And I think that's important to understand because we kind of talk about it like it's one thing and it really is not.
Right.
Yeah. So in terms of defining it, I think a way that we can kind of think of fear is that it is a conscious awareness of threat, right? It is that that response that we have, that emotional response, or there is a physiological response as well to something that we believe is going to cause us some harm, right? So wondering now, we probably have all heard the notion or the idea that fear actually is a good thing, right? It's positive. Anybody have any sense of why that is, or have heard that before? That fear is a good thing?
I've
Well,
definitely heard it. Go ahead. No, I was going to say I've heard that before, that you know addressing your fear will allow you to overcome it. So fear can be good in some instances because it challenges you to overcome whatever that fear is that you might have. If it's fear of speaking, fear of swimming, fear of whatever that fear might be, being able to address it, being able to overcome it, can be a win for you.
Right, right. Now that's very true. And also from an evolutionary perspective, fear has been considered a positive thing because it has kept us away from, right? It helped us to pay attention to and avoid those things that could be a threat to our very existence. So in that
so like
way,
fight or flight. Yeah.
like what?
Like fight or
Fight
flight.
or
Sorry, like fight. That's what I
Oh, yeah,
initially thought
right,
of as fight or flight. And how often Black people use fight or flight in urban neighborhoods of run. You see somebody running, you gonna start running too. You gonna run with the skip run and look back. You know the run I'm talking
the
about, like
skip run. Yeah,
the skip run,
We know
the
that.
skip
We're
run
familiar with
back.
that.
What what? And
Yes.
I haven't heard that before, the skip run.
We saw it just a few weeks ago.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's it is fight or flight, right? And so and also similar to pain, right? But pain, though nobody wants to feel pain, it's protective, right? When you put your hand on the hot stove, if you don't feel that pain, potentially you could burn your hand up, right? And not even know it. So similarly, fear kind of keeps us it keeps us alert to protect us. So um
Mhm.
as I was mentioning, though, that fear is that range of experience is not one particular thing. Um, uh, as you just mentioned, Teresa, it all fears, whether it's as minimal as just kind of like nervousness or
Mhm.
as max, intense as something like a phobia, they all have one common physiological base, and that is what you were saying, fight or flight, right? And
wow.
yeah.
Wow, no, I'm thinking about so much in our community about how we are in constant fear of things happening. I mean, let's talk about the fear of your lights getting shut off. Let's talk about the fear of paying your rent. Let's talk about the fear of not having something that's essential for your survival. And if you imagine how many Black people have never had any relief
Mm.
from that. And so your life has
Oh,
become
yeah.
a systematic approach to managing fear. I
Mhm.
Mm.
mean, when we think about it, I'm actually, I was wondering, Sister Tequila, like when we looking at certain things, I know we had some discussion. So I wanted to I'm getting excited because I kind of am ready to sort of talk about some specifics about where we're going with this or where we're trying to present today to this. So I kind of am ready. I'm like on the edge. Where are you at with it?
Yes. Sister Monique, she mentioned phobia. So this time I'm thinking like fears and just phobias are the same thing. And I realize now like it's not. And that there are certain triggers and root causes to fear. And through pre-production, I was looking up some research and a few items and things like what causes fear. And I looked up in my research some different phobias. I'm just going to read a few out to you, like traumatic events. You mentioned like lights getting shut off. To some, that's traumatic. It's like post-traumatic experiences, domestic violence in the home, car accidents, physical abuse, children, parents getting raped. I mean, that's a real thing. Social situations, Sister Monique mentioned. I mean, that's a real thing. You get in crowds, you don't know how to communicate with other people. You just stand around looking. Health concerns, loss of control. A lot of us, we may lose control. That's a form of fear. Um, Financial worries, that's a major fear. Not having enough money, You work, trying to go to
Yeah.
school while you're working, trying to take care of
Yeah.
your children, and just coming up with those things. That's a form of fear. Losing your home, abandonment. Those are some triggers. Natural disasters. We're fearing things that could happen that may not happen. Just in our mind. So it's just so many root causes to fear, and it's so deep on so many levels. Like you mentioned, just thinking about that, like your lights getting cut off. That's something that I'm like, that is a fear.
Yeah.
That's a real fear, and our communities are dealing with that. And right now, it may be some right now with their lights cut off right now.
Or any, I kid you not, a family member, I'm not gonna say specifically, sent me a picture of their eviction notice on their door.
Mm-hmm.
And she said all day at work, she couldn't even focus. And
Mm.
she's there in all this fear. And all she kept saying is, I need my children to have a place to stay.
Right.
And me, I got my cape on to the rescue. I'm not gonna let that happen. But the fact is that she's dependent on me to resolve that. And imagine how many Black people have to, and brown people, we're dependent. Even when we're talking about the Latino population immigrating to America, fear of being deported every day.
Every day.
Which forces you to band together. And you talked about that, Monique, about when is fear good? When you have an agenda, fear will push you to complete it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It will propel you to complete it. My fear of getting old and not doing the things that I said I wanted to do on my agenda, that scares me because I watch people grow old.
Right.
Yeah.
And regret all the things that they have not done yet.
Correct.
And that is a daily fear for me. And so that's why part of this show was essential for me anyway, is because I said I need to continue to leave a legacy because I have a lot to offer. And my fear is that I'm not going to put a little crumb in the bucket to create change in my own community that lives in fear when I have a fruitful support team and I have some fruitful knowledge to gain. It's nothing if you take it with you.
Absolutely.
That's correct.
I want to die with my resources in my mind. I want to give it to somebody. So here we are. Here we are today. Right?
That's
right.
That's right.
That's
That's
amazing.
right.
So many things are coming to mind as I'm listening to you talk. And one of the things I want to make a point of, because you talked about, Teresa, you talked about our experience, the Black experience in this world and how stressful it is. And right, stress is that, that fight or flight really is a stress response. So when we're talking about fear and stress, you're talking about the same continuum. I hope we understand. But I think one of the things that it's important to kind of note is that fight or flight response, and we've all learned about this in grade school, if you remember, right? That's when you see the bear in the woods, they'll teach you, right? And then certain physiological things start to happen, like the heart rate increases, your breathing gets shallow, your pupils dilate, get sweaty, and certain things begin to shut down. But all of that is happening so that your body can optimize survival, right? So that you can either get stronger than whatever this fear is that's threatening you, or this thing that is threatening you, or you can run away from the thing that is threatening you. Now, so that's a good thing, right? That's responsible for our survival over the millions of years of evolution that we have. But the thing is, our brains don't distinguish between a threat that is physical, right? That's all physical. It doesn't distinguish between that physical threat and the psychological one, like you all just mentioning. And I think that's a really important thing because most of us are under constant threat, not because we're seeing a bear in the woods, not because we are, somebody beating us up. We're under constant threat because our lights are getting cut off, right? Because I don't know, some fear of being rejected by someone or something, fear of failure, being embarrassed. Like all of these things are things that people fear, and it triggers the same thing.
Absolutely. The fear of making decisions. That's a fear. Like I would use me as an example. Like trying to make decisions. You're deciding, okay, am I gonna pay this tuition or do I need to buy food? Like that's a real thing. You want the education for your child, but then you got to feed your children. So that's stressful for a mother. And then you're sitting at home, you're trying to wonder, okay, how, what can I do? And you don't have a solution. then comes the anxiety, then comes, fear of just making decisions. And I know for myself that was a big thing, because I'm like, I just don't want to make the wrong decision, or I
Right.
don't have enough choices or options in front of me. And so
Wow.
I don't think we understand the different levels of fear and how we live in that on a regular basis.
Right.
Exactly.
And tell them about how many children you have that you got to make decisions for. Okay.
Oh, and that part.
That part. That
Of
part.
that, like, knowing my children are going to grow up, and I'm like, did I make the right decision for them? Does this child want to go to college? Maybe they don't. Is it something that I did? Any traumas? Like, it's so much that we carry, and I don't think society understands. Like, for me, I never knew how to cope with it. So I'm learning and wanting to, just be here today, to be present, to even understand, like, how do you cope with these fears when they come? Like you said, you can run away from it, you can freeze, you can deal with it. But I find myself at times running away from, the
Mm,
feeling of that fear, because I don't want to deal with it.
right. Can
Yes.
anybody else relate to that?
I absolutely can relate to that. As a when I was younger and my children were younger and I was a single mom, and of course my parents were always getting evicted. And so for me, it was important for me to stay in an environment, even if I didn't like the environment I was living in, because I would rather stay in that environment and be able to pay my rent, even though I too got eviction notices on my door, opposed to going and moving someplace else that I couldn't afford. And for me, it was always important to have some level of stability, even if that environment wasn't the right environment for me. But that's all I could do as a single mother at that time. So for me, I stayed in a place for 10 years. It didn't suit me, but I needed to be there. You know what I mean? Because I would always think about us getting put out when I was younger. And so, being put in homeless shelters and all of that. And I didn't want that for my children. So for me, stability, even if it was in an unstable environment, was more important than being put out. So that fear restricted me from moving forward and even considering that I could do better, because in my mind at that time, at least my children have a stable home to be in. So fear
Mm,
can definitely restrict you to do things that you perhaps would not consider doing. But when you got to look over there at them babies, you know what I mean? It becomes about them more than it becomes about you at that point in your life.
I'm going to say something really personal for Black women, just in case we have a large Black audience, but just to speak to it, is that I said something at another conference, and I treat Black women. And when I think about it, it makes me emotional when I think about the type of things women have to do in the absence of men to feed their children. And when I say that again because the especially the Black woman's struggle is so deep, because we've had to always do things that will never be repeated if it
mm,
meant our children would eat. And I say that because I know those of you who are still sitting in that pain of the shameful things that you had to do may seem not even shameful anymore, because you almost feel like a hero at times.
Come on. I am a hero.
You should put a cape on, Black woman, because you are a hero for many families from
Yes,
slavery when
ma'am.
we carried the families. Let's talk about the root causes and what is in our DNA of fear.
Yes.
Imagine hundreds and hundreds of years of slavery. Do you think it ends when people say, oh, slavery was a long time ago? Do you think it is not transferred into the next generation through your
Absolutely.
DNA?
yes.
Do you
Absolutely.
think the fear does not transfer into the next generation in your DNA? Let's talk about, remember we talked about this backstage. We were talking about how your parents, Amila, how our parents in Latino and Black cultures, you didn't have a voice as a child. You were told to sit down and be quiet. You couldn't
That's
ask
right.
questions. And even now when we parent, we be like, why they talking? You know why we saying that? Because that's a condition that we
Correct.
think that children are young. They're not supposed to talk and express themselves. And now
Correct.
we grow up as adults not communicating and expressing. So now we got social phobias because we don't really know how to articulate ourselves in a positive way when it matters. So when
Correct.
Exactly.
we in the hood, we can talk all kind of stuff. We can be the best gangster ever, but then we
Really at that
put
point.
you in another environment and you shut down. Let's talk about
Yes.
that. Like
Let's
there
talk
is,
about
oh, oh, are you afraid now? You afraid to go to that nice restaurant and order? Oh, you afraid, but you was just talking mess at the burger stand up the street. Like, what happened? What happened?
That's just the
Sorry.
insecurity coming out. It's just the insecurity coming out. You know,
There
if
you
I
go.
wasn't able to express myself inside my home, you're gonna hear me in these streets, right? Because that's what you hear sometimes when or see even in the school system with our children. They're always being told to be quiet, shut up. I don't want to hear you talk, whatever. And then they get in school and act a whole fool. And you know, sometimes because they're not being allowed to be heard at home. So it's
Mm.
important that we allow our children to have a voice. I was a victim of that. I didn't allow my two older children to have a voice, you know, but you live, you learn, and you mature, and you learn from your mistakes. And I allow my two younger children to have a voice within reason so that they would be able to have a level of assurity, you know, there of being secure and safe and knowing that I have a voice. What I say matters. And I won't be
Yes.
ostracized or scrutinized because of what I say, because I have a safe space in my home. A lot of our children don't have a safe space at home. So when they
Mhm.
get outside the home, they act up. You know, they're troublemakers. But really, if we just hear them and allow them to use their voice in a positive way, we wouldn't see all the chaos that we often see within the school system and in the streets. They just want to be heard. So they're gonna make some
Yeah.
noise. You know, they're gonna sound the alarm, they're gonna ring a bell, they're gonna do whatever they need to do. Good attention is better, bad
None.
attention is
Better than
attention.
none.
You know what I It's better than none. It's
And that
attention.
fear cripples us as well. And I remember like my mom, she was so fearful. She had 3 girls and 1 boy, and we didn't go anywhere. So we were latchkey. So that means that your mom leave you at home and she go everywhere, and we never got to go. Like I don't remember ever going to an amusement park as a child with my mom ever. She never took us places like that because she was so fearful that we would get snatched, we would get raped, something would happen. So she was just like, "No, you can't go anywhere. I feel more safe with you being at home." But then when you get older, now you're fearful of being in the world. So I had to teach myself, okay, it's okay to go out places. It's okay to like I never got on a plane until I was almost 30. That's my first time getting on a plane because I fear like, okay, I don't want to travel because the fear of death. We may die, fear of heights. We need to get out of that. And I finally realized, oh my God, I got to another state within an hour and I'm back home within an hour. Like I could have saved so much time
At 30.
Yeah.
At 30.
my life me driving places for 12 hours trying to get there because I'm fearing and then still experiencing tires messed up or car
Yeah.
accidents. So, we deprive ourselves of life because of fear. We don't do what we need to do to be able to eliminate that so that we can actually live our best life.
Absolutely.
That really, it goes to show you how much fear is more a state of mind. And sometimes people will say that fear is irrational, right? From a kind of a more philosophical or even spiritual perspective, people will say that fear is an illusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not real. And because it's like the example you just gave, Sister Tukwela, is it's grounded in something that has not yet happened,
Mhm.
right? We, because of some memory or some experience we had or that we saw someone else have, we create some sort of cognitive construct about it. And then anything that looks like that or is similar or the same as that, now fear comes up in us for that thing, and we haven't even experienced anything yet. So it really, if we think of it from that perspective, we understand fear is such an enemy to our life.
It
It's such
is.
an enemy to being
Disease.
able to, yes.
But
It's a
if you look
disease
at
that
our
can eat us.
children, I'm sorry, if you look at our children, they don't have fear. Look at our
Mhm.
baby. My son is 9 years old. He don't have much fear at all, right? We are the ones that set parameters on what fear
That's
is
right.
for them.
That's right.
Until they, understand what fear is in terms of don't touch the stove, don't touch the hot, that kind of thing. But they don't know fear. We are the ones that put fear in them, just like during slavery. We put fear in our children because look, if you do this, master gonna take you away from me. It was justified at that time, but just like Sister, Teresa said, it's now in our DNA. So we fear unnecessarily to the point that we will hold on to our boys, to our male children, to them, to our children as a whole, so that they don't have fear. So we put fear in them unnecessarily, and we don't allow them to grow to be the humans that they need to be because we allow fear to restrict them as it has restricted us.
Mm.
Our producers wanted to make sure Because our
They do.
producers, we got people working behind the scenes and they are probably just as knowledgeable and as expanded in their breast of what
Yes,
we're talking about. And he wanted to make sure that we read the acronym false evidence appearing real is the
yes, that's right.
FEAR, false
That's
evidence,
right.
meaning that which has not happened, as Sister Monique said, that
Yes.
has not happened, but it appears so real. It's really gonna happen to
Right.
me. It's really gonna happen. And then trying to get over that and trying to get over
Mhm.
that. So what we want to do now is sort of come up with a plan of action to overcoming fears, taking control of you, taking control of how you present yourself. Because when you live in a constant state of fear, you have this sort of reactive way of being. Somebody
Mhm.
asks you something because you living in so much fear, you have these very big responses that don't really go with the question. That may be you. You may be still struggling with some fears and things that have really been setting with you that somebody triggers you and you go. So, what is our plan of care in our communities? What has been missing, Dr. Monique, in our communities for healing past some of these ailments? Now, we're going to talk about these same interventions every show because they're pretty consistent, but we don't want anybody to miss our. You have to come up with a plan of action. The way we resolve things is productivity. For most of my
Yes.
patients, I give them assignments that produce something. You can't go wrong when you produce something out of
Mm.
something and then you have something to show for it. Every time you do an act that's counter the fear that produces something, it lessens the fear.
Mhm.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
called exposure therapy.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
You do it a little bit. You know, what's that thing where I hate to get up, where you kind of touch it, it's hot, you keep touching it and you keep touching it. And the closer you get a threshold for where the hot is,
Mm-hmm.
right? You take your child to the stove. Don't tell your child don't go in the stove. All that's going to do is increase his
Correct.
curiosity.
Mhm.
Correct.
Open the stove, put his hand there and say hot and be like, ooh, hot. And then they start doing, ooh, hot. And now they don't really have a fear. They have a threshold. They have an idea of why it's important not to open something, right? All right. So, anybody else
Mm-hmm.
have any particular interventions that may have worked for them, or Dr. Monique, any that you use with your patients? I use so many for mine, but I just
Yeah.
kind of what everybody else has experienced that worked for them.
Yeah, it depends on what it is, what the fear is, if it's kind of a phobia based fear or just somewhat of an anxiety. It really does depend. But I find that I do, on the anxiety end of the spectrum, I do a lot of what I call reality based therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Helping people to kind of um, understand, first of all, that, you know, their fears, their anxieties are not real. Their anxieties are an illusion, like straight up. But then helping them to understand or have I often try to help people to kind of pay attention um, to their the tape recorder in their own mind, right? To their own self-talk. That usually that's where it starts, right? I have this kind of fundamental belief in my mind about something. And because I'm holding that belief, then when I encounter it or I think I'm going to encounter it, I have this certain tape that plays in my mind about that thing. And that tape playing, this thing has not even happened yet, but I'm already anxious and I'm nervous and I don't know what to do. And I'm recoiling because I'm I am creating the thing without the thing actually happening. All of that is illusion. None of that is real. So helping people to kind of pay attention to that self-talk when that comes up, um, being able to kind of learn how to respond to it, learn how to say, I'm in, sometimes people have agoraphobia, right? They're afraid of being around other people. They kind of stay in their homes. And so when I'm out with people, what is it that I'm afraid of? I'm not afraid. I'm afraid of, people touching me. I'm afraid I'm going to get COVID, whatever it is. Looking at how logical or illogical that thought or that self-talk is usually can help people to kind of respond to it and balance it out. When I recognize that it's illogical, okay, now I have to create a different response. So I don't know. I hope that made sense. It was a little long.
Yeah, what I was thinking was radical acceptance, which is sort of accepting what is going to happen. That's a treatment, which is like radical acceptance. Is the car going to drive by? It's going to drive by regardless. So learning to accept the things that are going to happen and
Mhm.
devise a plan of care to counter it once it does happen. Okay, if this is going to happen, what is my worst? I always tell people, what is the worst
The
case
worst thing.
scenario?
Mhm.
Let's play out the worst case scenario. When we look at the worst case scenario, they're like, well, that's not that bad. Okay, so that should reduce some of the anxiety about what could happen. The only thing that can happen is, okay, you got to make a left and go back around the corner and start over again.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna
Right.
try.
Right. And that's so helpful too, because when you actually have them walk through what is the possible outcomes of you confronting this particular thing, because in our minds often we catastrophize, right? It's the end of the world, it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. But when you actually think about it and talk about it, that's the reality piece. Then it's like, okay, the worst thing is it'll be uncomfortable, well, the worst thing is I might be embarrassed, the worst thing, right? And it,
Yeah.
you kind of lessen the catastrophizing of it.
It does. It does. And you said it was in the mind. So I know I've had multiple therapy sessions, actually, some with Sister Monique, actually, as well. And some of it was the cognitive behavioral therapy. And they
I love.
basically, what she said, they challenged the negative belief patterns. And
Yep.
Mm.
myself, I didn't realize, again, I'm speaking on my own self, how negative my thinking was. I didn't think I was
Yes.
negative. And it'd be small stuff. And then they told me to make sure I kind of like write down when I'm starting to feel negative, when I start to feel some anxiety. Why am I feeling it? What is the reason? So being able to pay attention to the moment you feel a trigger, the moment you feel uncomfortable, and
Mm.
dealing with that. And like she said, writing it out. What's the worst that can happen in this situation? And then what can happen? And then what else can happen? And then when you think about it, it'd be this small. And so being
Correct.
able to do that or journal, your feelings and just write it out so that you can see it on paper in front of you. And when you actually see it, for myself, I realize this, I can handle it. Whether I'm writing down my day, if I'm overwhelmed, like for example, if I got a lot of stuff to do, I write it down and I have to do it in sessions. Okay, I'm gonna do this first hour. I'm gonna just get this done. What's the most important thing on my list that I need to do? Circle the most important thing, focus on that thing, and get it done. And I'm able to accomplish things in my day. So it's the cognitive behavioral therapy works.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. CBT. That's, if you ever hear
Yes.
anybody say, it's one of the most effective things for Black people, because you mentioned a point, you probably didn't even realize it, is that Black people have so much negative self-talk and self-doubt because of slavery, because we live in poverty, because we're oppressed. We have a lot of self-doubt and negative talk. So it's reframing things into a different perspective that's more positive. Why is everything got to be bad? I asked my sister once, I said, hey, I got a nice school for my nephew to go to. When he comes to Chicago, he's this cool school. He going to be doing this. What you saying? The school he go to now ain't good? I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like,
That's what I think.
I was like, I thought you'd be happy. I was like, I'm just trying to tell you what I'm providing for your child. I'm thinking, giving some positive feedback on what he's going to be doing when he's here, so you'll know that his stay is going to be fruitful. And she's like, you trying to say I'm a bad mama? You trying to
Right.
say I'm like, oh my Lord. And do you imagine how when you laugh because you know how many people do that?
It's real. That's a real thing.
Very
Real,
much
because we
so.
do it all the time. We say, oh girl, do you got another shirt to wear? What, you don't like the shirt I got on? What's wrong with my shirt? Why you always got to be talking about my shirt? You a hater. It's like we go through all of those
All these emotions.
We
retardedness.
just have to practice mindfulness and just know meet people where they are,
That's
and once we're able to meet people where they are and say, because we can say, oh, she tripping, but why is she tripping? Try to put on her shoes, try to live where she's at right now. You know what I mean? Your intentions, you were well intended, right? So, but as long as we practice mindfulness, we're able to meet a person where they are.
Go ahead,
I know I've
mindfulness.
been guilty exactly of what Sister Teresa's talking about. I know I've been like, but once you practice mindfulness and ask yourself, why did you respond that way? What got you to that point? And then you play your day back, or even a couple of days back in your head, you can say, oh, because now you're being mindful of what your triggers are. You're being mindful of why you responded the way you responded, and then you can be mindful of how you respond, inshallah, God will, the next time. You know what I mean? Because sometimes it's not even about, what was said. It may have been something somebody said a couple of weeks ago, but because you're now a couple of weeks ago instead of today, you're not necessarily able to practice mindfulness, and you like, you know what, I'm sorry, but at that point you ready to just pop off at anybody that might say something that you don't agree with. So I think practicing mindfulness and just being aware of, how you're feeling in that moment or what triggers you will really go a long way with a lot of us.
But our
Right,
mentor
right.
said to look at a person's intent.
Yes,
Mm.
He said, when
absolutely.
to stop everything in its tracks, look at the intention of where
Yes,
the person is coming from. Don't look at how black people go, well, how they said it, they didn't say it right. Well, how do you
correct.
want me to say it? I said it this way, I said it this way. I said, is any way going to be correct? So if we just dispel with that and say, what is the intent of my cousin, my sister, or my friend?
Right,
What are they trying
right,
to achieve here? Oh, they want to give they're excited about my child coming to see them. Oh, that's so cute. You know what I mean? Sort of saying what is their intention. Or and if you're not clear about what the intention, this is something we don't learn as
that,
children.
Right.
Ask clarifying questions. Clarifying questions is,
exactly,
what do you mean by that?
Right.
exactly.
What can you give me an example? I'm good for telling people. Can you give me an example? Can you give me, especially when people make accusations or they say things, can you give me an example? They do that all the time. All the
Right.
time. I'm like, can you give me an example? Well, I can't think of none now. But if they do it all the time,
Then you
how
should be
can
able to pull up an example easily.
Mhm.
And it's our thinking. It's that pessimistic thinking, We think everybody out to get us,
so
and you
would you
learn
say
to
one of the
do
solutions is being self-aware,
Yes,
self.
definitely, definitely,
Right,
definitely.
right,
knowing you?
Yeah,
right. And that
yeah,
that goes to I love the mindfulness piece, by the way. I'm a huge proponent of mindfulness. It helps to. I like the way you explained that. I want to just add a little more. It helps to kind of short circuit or the automatic responses, right, that we have, that we when we're not thinking, we auto response to things, but when we are kind of bring ourselves into a mindful space, then we can control the response that we have versus just responding from a visceral place. So that's a really helpful, whenever you're dealing with fears, that can be really, really helpful. But also to the point of know yourself, I was thinking from a psychodynamic perspective, a lot of us carry and hold fears based upon things that happen in childhood, and some of these things are pre-verbal, right? Before we even are able to put a narrative in it, so it's very, very visceral in our body. So we respond to things, and sometimes we don't even really know why we're responding to certain things. And so, kind of being able to backtrack and do some homework or digging as to why am I responding like this? Why is it that? And sometimes you'll find there's some really early reasons. When it's pre-verbal, it tends to be a lot more complicated to really uh, parse and get into the content of it because you don't have the words for it. And
mm,
I find I do EMDR, and that is a very effective therapy for dealing with anxieties, traumas, fears, things that we can't really access. So I think that's really helpful.
Well, that's a lot of solutions. I mean, we real women with real solutions, okay?
yeah,
And
yeah,
we got a whole bunch more to go. I'm telling you, when we prep these shows, it's hours and hours of prepping and discussing. We
yeah,
actually hash it out and have debates about what we want to talk about and how we want to go back. We really take a careful thought in to what we present to our community because we want to be effective. We're not just trying to be right. We're not just
right.
trying to jump on here and talk about some stuff to have a random support group chat. This is like real stuff that we feel like it's time. It's time for us to stop hiding in fear of our mental health. It's time to start exposing our mental health because in a minute it's just going to be on display anyway. It's probably
Absolutely.
already on display. It's probably the star of your show.
That part.
So
Yeah.
it's probably the star of
Excited
your
them.
whole show and your whole household, and our whole community is mentally struggling.
Mm.
Mentally struggling. I get emails all the time. I have waiting lists, and I have to bump my Black patients up to the front of the line because not many of us seek therapy. And
Mm,
a lot of them come through Medi-Cal, which is public aid. They can't
mm,
get a therapist because there's minimal support for mental health. I mean, I wonder why. I
Hmm.
wonder why. Why we're not getting that. Now, we don't want to forget about substance use in our
Yeah,
community. the constant fear and the crack and the heroin and the meth and the synthetic drug of marijuana, which is causing our children to be psychotic instant. The fear of your child walking out the door and being killed. These are all things that I think we could spend all day talking about, but we have to wrap up. I am definitely enjoying this show. I don't know if anyone else has any more compelling points that they want to bring before we wrap it up, because we're going to move into what's to come on the next show. And we're going to be talking about questions and answers and giving people an opportunity to ask maybe something jarred your attention about today that you want to ask. We're going to be open because we have a clinical psychologist. I'm a psychotherapist, and we have real women with real experiences on this show that have children and families and have been through the things, overcame, and is here today to tell their story. Just curious to my lovely calls. Do we have anything else left for today? Or we're gonna save it for the next show?
I just think it's important that when we find ourselves, facing any type of fear and anxiety, that we, get the resources and we connect with those persons that can help us, right? And never be afraid to take care of your own mental health. And I think that because it's been such a stigma in our communities for so long, that, you now find, the generations behind us, they take care of their mental health, perhaps more than we would, because they understand the importance of taking care of their mental health, especially during COVID. You had a lot of young people making sure that they did the telehealth, they did whatever they needed to do to ensure that they were okay, in terms of their mental health. And I think that's just important. And it should no longer be a stigma behind, taking care of your own mental health. And I just think that's important, whatever, how that looks like for you. If it's through a friend, if it's through walking in nature, whatever, at least start taking care of your mental health until you're able to get, a licensed clinical therapist or what have you. But I think it's important that you take care of you first, so that you can be able to take care of those that you are responsible for. But you're most importantly responsible for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We good, girls?
Yeah, she said it.
She said a mouthful.
Pray, take care of yourself.
Pray and have some belief and faith that you will keep going. When we stop being productive and we stop trying, we die a mental death, and soon to follow is our physical. So we want to take care of ourselves. All right, well, we're going to move into the question and answer section, but I have to announce that our next second show is, we had to hash it out. I'm telling you, we be hashing it out. We Black women, we all got opinions. We came to a consensus that our next show is going to be overcoming trauma. We ain't going to tell you what kinds of trauma yet, but that's why you didn't hear the word trauma today, because we saving it, because it's big. It's a whole show on trauma and overcoming trauma in our lives. And when you think about trauma, girls, what we thinking about? What we kind of talking about?
Childhood. What was that?
It could be abuse, it could be rape, it could be all kinds of childhood trauma.
For me, racial trauma.
Absolutely. All of it.
That racial discrimination in the workplace. That's a killer right there.
Workplace, out in the everywhere.
Exactly. So we're going to tackle some traumas. We haven't fully we got so much on the table. We so full. I just want you to come back so you can see what we sort of researched and put together and prepared for you on the next show. So without further ado, right now we're about to move into our questions and answers. We're going to be taking live questions, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Community Culture Unveiled. Absolutely phenomenal show. It was right on time. It's wonderful to see that you're all enjoying the show. Thank you to those who have tuned in. We really appreciate those of you for being a part of our fantastic studio audience. Today, we're thrilled to have some questions from our engaged audience members. So let's dive right into it and hear what they have to ask today. So first up, joining us this evening, we have Brother Derek. Brother Derek, you on?
Yes, I am. How are
Yes,
you?
yes. Wonderful. And I hope you are. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and then go into the question you would like to pose to us today.
All right. Yeah, my name is Derek Hayes. I am from the city of Chicago, south side of Chicago. I'm into by past dealing with education. I've been into counseling, sales, and training. It's kind of a little bit about myself.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, what question did you have regarding fear or anything in the show that stood out to you?
Well, first of all, I want to say, that the show was very good. And it did kind of stimulate different things in terms of fear that many things we go through and we think about that really don't even acknowledge. But to that end, I'm looking at more of the question is how do you deal with as I said, I deal with education and counseling, and I deal with young people, and now there's just more and more. There's more and more going on with society in terms of our younger people having children at even younger and younger ages, and not by accident, like on purpose. And so that's kind of a fear I deal with, just in terms of dealing with how our society is going with that being the trend moving up.
Wow, wow. Thank you for posing that. So we have Sister Resta, Monique. How do you deal with the fear of what's going on in our society with the young people having children at younger and younger ages? Wonderful question.
Children?
Young people
I'm
having
sorry, I didn't
children.
hear you.
I said, do you have children? Do you have
Yes,
daughters?
I do. Yes, I do.
Okay. Is the fear connected to your children or has been connected to them as they were growing up or as an adult?
Well, I don't think so much because I moved away from Chicago, then came back, and it's just more about when I work with younger people that are in the city, and I just kind of see some of the mentalities of what they're thinking and what they see as success, and I see that having children, it seems to be not the priority, but it is in the top five.
Dr. Monique, did you want to go first? Because I know you probably have something to give into this question.
Yeah, I have a question actually about you talk about fears, and in the show you saw that we frame fear as understanding that it's kind of happens on a spectrum. So when you say how do you deal with fear? I'm wondering, are you just kind of a little, concerned or anxious about it, or are you kind of having panic attacks about it, or I'm trying to understand. I
Okay,
would
so
like to understand where
right,
you are.
no panic attack or anything like that. I'm okay. Yeah, it's just a concern I have just for my daughters are 24 and 21, and I know that as they're growing up, this is their world, and I just see that being the case. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with having children young. There's that's nothing wrong with it. But when a majority of people see that is the way to go, it's just concerning more. No panic. I'm
Right.
safe. I'm safe.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not that you have a fear, it's that you're looking at something that appears to you to be problematic, right? And so I guess the words that came up when I was trying to, I kind of assumed that, but I didn't want to assume. But what came up to me is take action, take action, be a part of helping the solution. And it sounds like you're already doing that because you said you're into counseling, you work with young people. So it sounds like you probably are already quite active in trying to kind of shift that. But what also came to mind, I think it was something that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, but I don't quote me as that he said it, but recognizing the fact that we have a social condition that Black people are under in this country, and we are getting slaughtered physically, mentally, we're getting slaughtered in this country. Sometimes things happen for a reason. And I can't help but to wonder that perhaps it is kind of God's design, right? To compensate for how many of us are kind of leaving the earth. We're killing ourselves, we're being killed, right? Um, that might be a way of offsetting some of that.
Hmm.
Sometimes there's divine purpose in these things that we don't see. But of course, I'm sure as an educator or someone who works with young people, someone who is concerned as you are, I'm sure you also recognize that, yeah, you can have the children. It's not that only, right, that you're having the children young. It's that you're having the children young and you're not prepared. You're having the children young, right? So there's that part of it too. And that's part of you being part of the solution.
Sure, sure. I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna jump in and say, you know, I'm sure, Derek, that you really focus on raising your children to be as knowledgeable as possible about cause and effect and consequences of whatever they choose to do. And I think that parents have to spend more time with their children, understanding it and giving them a platform to have open discussions versus if you look at the time you spend on social media, it probably doesn't compare and measure up to the time you spend with your children. I actually did this exercise with many people about how much time they spend on social media based on the analytics on their phone. And I thought, do you spend that much time with your children, having conversations with you, providing a platform for them? So I think if I was to say anything to parents is pay attention. Don't wait till it's after the fact, then come behind them and then hold them accountable for something you haven't held yourself accountable for working with our children. Social media and the public and the devil is raising our children. You have to make a decision how much of that you want to allow, all of that to be a part of your household, starting from birth, starting from when you put that iPad in their hands so they could be quiet, up at the age of 1. When I see it, probably younger than that, with a phone, to hush a child versus to create activities for them to do. I know it's difficult, but we have to create other outlets and getting in tune with help and helping community is. I think we're at a point where communities are going to have to raise each other. And we're going to have to band together. We're going to have to do more to help each other, whether you like it or not. I think Black people, because of our trust issues, we're not big on letting other people's in our personal space. And that's going to be something where, as you can see, the climate, right? It's moving in a direction where you have no choice but to barter services, to work with each other, to help each other, and to help raise each other's children, no matter who they are and how old they are. If that makes any sense. So I want to thank you for your question. I thought it was well needed.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brother Darrell.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for having the courage to get up and ask that question. So now we're going to bring on a young brother. His name is Brother Damir. He's going to have some questions as well. Let's see. Hello, hello, hello. All right. Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. And thank you. And same for you. Where are you from? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, my name is Damir. I'm a 17-year-old high school student, and I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now, what question did you want to pose to us this evening?
Well, actually, I have personally dealt with social anxiety, especially during my middle school. And my question is, how can friends, family members, and communities provide support to individuals struggling with anxiety, especially those facing social anxiety in terms of initiating conversations and feeling accepted based off the show?
Okay. I'm just going to continue the last thing I said, and then I want you, Dr. Monique, to jump in, about social media and how, when we think about my generation, I'm pushing 50. I ain't gonna lie, I'm pushing 50. And so I grew up in the 80s and the 90s where you played outside, and outside provided you the resources and the platform for you to work out your critical thinking skills, because if you came in the house too many times, you was going to have to stay. So you figured out where to drink out the water fountain. You figured out how to share snacks. You were very competitive in double dutch and tetherball, and all those things that you sort of learned outside served as a way to help build your peer-to-peer contact and reduce social anxiety, right? And so for our children today growing up, unfortunately, in your era, you all have more access to resources and information, but you have less access to managing conflict resolve, which is very good. You test the boundaries of that. So when you haven't been in the elements of other people engaging because you've been in the house on electronics or just in school on video during the pandemic, it sort of lowers your ability to fight through social engagement, right? So I just wanted to lay the platform for why that's even a struggle. The first thing we can do, one of the first interventions for that was, I mentioned earlier, is exposure therapy. And worst case scenario of some of my patients, they say, when I go in public, I get social anxiety because people are looking at me and they're going to be judging me and they're going to think I look funny or they think this. The question I ask is, what is the fear based on your social anxiety? Is it fear of being judged? Is it fear of people not liking you? Is it fear of someone thinking you're not handsome? Is it fear that you're black? You have to first then discover that for yourself, right? I'm gonna let Dr. Monique jump in because I can. This is one of my favorites. Actually, I deal with this a lot every day in session. So I want her to go ahead and respond.
Yeah, sure. And then you might want to come again behind me as well. But um, so the thing being, I'm curious, have you received any counseling or therapy for the social anxiety?
No, ma'am, I have not.
So I was wanting to, I guess, encourage you to consider that. Your question is about other people's role in it, but I think it has to first start with you, right?
Absolutely.
You understanding, like Sister Teresa was saying, what is kind of this social phobia, this fear? What is it rooted in, right? What are the whys behind it? So you understanding it, and then allowing a professional to also help you with key strategies that work specifically for you to
Mhm.
help you overcome and deal with uh, confronting this social fear based upon what what it's rooted in. So that's you knowing, one, the why, and you knowing, two, the what, like what works for me, what strategies actually are helpful, right? Once you know that, then other people, you need to also be educated on what is this social fear, right? This social phobia, what is it, and how is it affecting you, and then what are some of the things that work? Because the biggest role I think that other people can play in your to benefit you is to know what helps you and to prompt you. Because when you're in those moments where that fear is coming up, often those coping strategies can be as effective as they want to be, but if you don't use them, it's for naught, right? And often when we're in those spaces and that fear comes up, we don't think. We can't, we are just so nervous, we don't think about the strategies, we don't employ them. Wouldn't that be great if you had somebody next to you saying, breathe? This is, don't forget to breathe. Don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do that. This works for you. When you have that, then you use it and it can help you. So that, I think that's the biggest help that someone else can have in your process of dealing and overcoming social phobia.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. Those were good. Do you feel satisfied with that?
Yes.
Awesome. But your community and your friends, hang around people who encourage you to be the best version of yourself. That's my greatest advice. Is that everyone around you should encourage you to be the best you. You're an endangered species.
Mm,
We need you to survive, but we need you to survive at the highest vibration of confidence. You are an original man, and you were meant to rule, and you were meant to take over and manage yourself in the most confident way. And when that's stripped away from you, then they take the power from you. So we want to regain your power. So whatever we need to do to support that, just know there's always an open door for you, um, to reach out to any of us. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
any follow-ups on that, Dharma?
No,
Or was
ma'am.
that clear?
How does
Okay.
that make you feel when I say that to you?
It helps me get a better understanding and basically visualize what is being said, and I just have to take it and
Hmm. These are our youth. There's no wrong answer.
That's right.
just have to.
You're good.
Yeah,
Hmm.
just apply it. You got it.
Yep.
And
It
use it. Yeah.
right. That's the magic. It's in using it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it make you emotional to have that
Um,
say this?
just a little bit. I mean,
Hmm.
it's happening now, but yeah, that's yeah.
Well, we're with you.
Good. It should. It should. We're gonna get there. Awesome. All right, Sister Tequila.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very therapeutic. Very therapeutic. I really enjoyed those answers, and I hope the audience enjoyed those answers. With that being said, I think we have time to take a few more questions that we see in the chat. And so I'm going to go ahead and read off one. It is, how does fear impact parenting?
Hmm.
How How does fear impact parenting?
Well, we discussed that, right, Monique? We discussed it in the show about parenting and sort of repeating history, some rooted in slavery, some rooted in the way our parents raised us. This fear that our children will become us, all these different fears of what we have, if we're going to break them or not, fear of not doing a good enough job. So, sort of overcoming that, and kind of looking at what worked with you versus what can work with your child. I just want to remind everyone that every child you have is different, right, Sister Tequila? You have many children. I want you to speak about, I really do want you to tackle this and the variety of children you have and what they all mean in different ways to how you parent them, and some of the fears you may even have with, am I parenting each child correctly? Or am I using a blanket approach that was used on us that doesn't really work anymore?
Absolutely. This show definitely touched me personally because, again, a lot of the fears, like you expressed in the show, especially for myself, dealing with anxiety at a young age, not knowing what it was, and passing that down to my children as well. Just fear of just the regular social fears that they have, having a black male child at 17. I'm excited that he's about to start driving his car, but then I'm thinking about he might get stopped by the police and get murdered. Those are the thoughts. So at one time I'm excited, next second I'm filling up with anxiety. The same with my daughter. She's 13, she's blossoming, and I'm happy that she's beautiful and she's growing. But at the same time, again, those fears are kicking in. She's by herself. She could get raped. She could get brutalized. She may be standing somewhere, nobody may jump in to help her if she's going through something. Everybody might take their phone out. My younger children, I'm thinking about, what they're going to be. I have boys. Are they going to be in prison? Are they going to be able to escape that? What can I do to, help them to succeed in this society with everything weighing against them? And that keeps me up at night, trying to do all that I can do to make sure that that does not happen. And so it does cause that fear, because now I'm telling my daughter, okay, you can't go these places, you can't do these things because of that fear. I'm always telling my son, call me, wait for me, as though I'm always going to be present when he has to deal with it. And so one of the things I know that I have to do is, like you mentioned, Sister Monique, is to get more counseling and therapy myself, to pinpoint the whys of the fears. Why am I feeling it? What have I seen portrayed in society that has shown me that I should be afraid of these things? What am I trusting in? And just going into that, and also letting my children know, talking to them and speaking to them about these fears, not pushing it on them, but allowing them to know, what I'm experiencing and why I'm experiencing it. And these are things that we need to do. You also mentioned speaking to our children and having these conversations with them and spending more time with them than social media. That's something that I push my children as well to do. We have to have time, going back to watching movies together, literally talking to them, going through their phone, going outside, riding bikes, skates, all these things that our children grow up so fast. We're losing them in the fleeting moment. We need to, be present for them. And then the last thing before I turn it back over to you, Sister Resta, my mother, I actually was a product of a young mother. My mother had me at 13. So it was a lot that I didn't know about the feelings that I felt until I actually had these conversations with my mother. And instead of her speaking to me about these things, she was more afraid to protect me by not sharing things with me until I became an adult. And so a lot of things, if I would have known these things, I feel like I would have been better understanding to those things. So talk to your children, be present with your children, and just get the healing, counseling, and therapy that's necessary to be present.
Awesome. I don't think I need to say anything else besides that. I think it was a good answer to it. It's really no right or wrong answer. It's all in a fill out of experience, and it's called harm reduction, or reducing the chances of something happening. But we all know that at the end of the day, we're not the best of planners. We're not the final say in what happens. Um,
Yeah.
we do
I
our
want
best to prepare our children for whatever may come, and pray that that we have built them up enough to make the best decision possible in situations. Sorry, Dr. Monique.
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit because initially I was wondering, okay, well, what what is the fear, right? What are you afraid that I'm afraid I'm not going to parent perfectly or correctly. Some people have, am I afraid that some parents are afraid of disciplining their children because they're afraid their child's not going to like them in response to that. That's real for some parents. Is it a fear that, like Sister Tukola was saying, that I want to hold my children tight because I don't want anything to happen to them? I'm afraid for them to get hurt or what have you. It kind of, that is relevant, but then I'm recognizing also that whatever the fear, no matter what the fear is, fear constricts. The minister teaches us that fear, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan teaches that fear constricts, right? And we cannot go through life, whatever the fear, is it of parenting, of, social, speaking, some sort of social phobia, whatever it might be, understand that we have to release or somehow heal from that fear, because it's going to cause you to recoil and come away from the things that you need to be able to move into, to lean into in life. So no matter what the fear is, really, you've got to figure it out. And that's what this show is about, right? That's what we're doing, what we're doing. That's why we're bringing up the conversation. This is
All righty.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think we have time for one more question. This is a really good question. Is fear of success a real thing? Is it a real thing? Does it really exist?
If you come from a certain background that teaches you not gonna be nothing, if you come from a background that never showed you what success looked like and how to manage success,
say more.
If you come from, this is my personal journey. This is one of my soft spots. So I'm trying not to over engage because, I think parents are our first teachers of progress and success. And for us, brown and black people, when we don't praise our children and we don't validate their points at a young age, and we dismiss them and we invalidate them and we put fear in them that says they're never going to be nothing, with the goal of evoking this reversal effect, then how do you really manage success? Because there's an unconscious part of us that want to stay in the projects because it's familiar. Being poor is familiar. So I have friends who make a lot of money, but they still live poor, but then they make it seem like they're just being smart. I was like, nah, eating canned food ain't smart. You're going to die from eating canned food. Like, why? I ate canned food. I know eating canned food is not a part of you being smart and thrifty. It's just a part of you living in your trauma of poverty. Right. And so this fear of success, what is my role going to be there? I'm going to be by myself. Ain't nobody else coming with me. Is it going to be like, and what am I going to do there? Where am I going to live? Like, all these things sort of come up. So it's almost like we become addicted to the struggle. But I will tell you, when success comes, there's another struggle. You ain't going to be shy of no struggles.
Right.
Right, Monique?
That exactly. I feel like it's funny. I laughed because I think I fairly recently kind of was in a conversation about the same thing, but I've always wondered, that is that real? Like, fears, are people really afraid of success? And the determination, I guess, that I came to is similar to what you were talking about. I think it's more that people fear, if I'm successful, the hardship, responsibility, the limelight, whatever it might be that will be on me as a result of. I feel like not the success that people are afraid of; it's what comes with success. Like you were just kind of hitting on. That's my thought about it. That's an interesting question.
It's an interesting question, and it's only like, it's deep because I deal with, like, what is your fear of progress? Why are you so afraid to step out on that and push yourself to that limit? What do you people are afraid of what's on the other side.
Yeah, the unknown, like you said.
They'd rather sit in depression and be where they're at than see I dealt with this all day today. It was like the topic of discussion. Like, I just gave you a bulletproof plan of why it will work 100% almost. and you're still sitting there like scared, and they would rather sit in misery than to step out. And that brings me more fear. Like a point where I'm going to sit in filth and not try. How do we overcome that? How do we overcome that other than therapy, other than taking little steps at a time, other than achieving small things and knowing? I'm here to tell you, I always tell my patients, hey, I may sit right here, but I have new goals. They come with new obstacles and new issues. So once you complete one and you think, oh, she got it made. No, I don't, because I got more problems. I got more things to overcome. I got everybody asking me for money, like you said. Everybody think I'm rich. Everybody think I can just Zelle them some money. You know what I'm saying? And so now I start to filter my success, because you don't want to try to make it seem like I'm too successful. I'm like, I ain't gonna mention all that because you don't be getting a call about some money. So, I think it takes this sort of course. What do you think, Monique? I think it sort of takes a course of different avenues of how we sort of perceive it, depending on where we're at in life. I mean, someone who hasn't achieved anything, I could see that being very scary.
Mm.
Or
I want to add too.
Go ahead.
Also, just the mindset. I think one of you all mentioned it as well. Like growing up, a lot of people I have been around have a poverty mindset. So, like you said, when the success comes, it's like they shy away from it. And I would say myself, like when I started to get to a place where I was getting more successful in my own life, it was my fear was staying humble. That was my fear. I didn't even want to be in the limelight. Like I just had I don't know what it was. I don't like people acknowledging me or saying my name or putting me out, even though I have been out on social media. It took a lot for me to get out on social media. It took a lot for me deep down individually for me to be present. And afterwards, I always felt like I was undeserving of being in that spot, and I don't know why. So I know for me personally, I had to work a lot on my negative thinking, that kind of constricted me personally. So I had to listen to a lot of affirmations, a lot of motivational speaking. I had to have therapy. I had to talk to people, because that negative mindset always counter any positive thoughts that I have. I might think I'm doing a good job, but then the negative will come in and be like, no, it's not it. And so to me, that's a major thing. And that has to be, we have to understand that we are, as Black people, we can be successful. We are deserving of success as well. But again, if we don't really know that, we're stuck into that poverty type mindset that keeps constricting us from that.
I told my client today, why do you accept so little? And when I said that to her, the tears came, because I said to her, she was like, I was just always thought I could just be around my family and I'd be just a caregiver for my disabled brother. And I said, so you just thought you were going to be the sacrificial lamb and you just accepted so less. So her idea of success meant I'm going to depart from my family and leave them abandoned. There's so many causes. I want to encourage everyone with this whole fear topic. Everyone likes to clown me and be like, oh, you're such a why person. Because if you don't know the why and you say, I don't know, then you can't change the behavior. You can't identify the trigger that got you to where you're at. I can't imagine having children at a young age, Sister Tequila, but I can imagine the amount of fear it put into success, because now you've already done something that's frowned upon, having children young. So now you're questioning everything you do. And is this going to be a success, or is this going to be another setback? Because I already have a few setbacks. So we're afraid to have another setback. So then we don't try to do the successful thing, because if I don't make it, then it's somebody telling me I didn't do it right. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's like a whole trick bag of, that's why I don't tell nobody when I'm doing that. And I wait till it's over. You know why? Because you've had so many failures that you perceive as failures that you don't want nobody judging your another attempted success that may fail again.
All right. Beautiful, beautiful. And so thank you so much for all those that have tuned in. Powerful, powerful show. We would like you all to tune in. Please subscribe to our channel at Community Culture Unveiled. We have some powerful shows coming up in the future. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and make sure you tune back into the show soon. Peace, love, and blessings. Sister Teresa, Monique, anything you want to close out with?
Be your best self.
Be your
Strive.
best.
So we will see you soon. We'll be releasing the date of the new show very soon. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get all the latest updates to where we'll be, what we'll be doing, what events we'll be participating in, when our next shows and our topics are, so you can be a live member of our studio audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Brothers, anybody, family members, if you know anyone that needs this show and it's necessary, tell them to tune in.
Community Culture Unveiled, uncovering and discussing the secrets of mental health in oppressed communities.